The official box office predictions for Friday are out, and John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum has been kicked off the number one spot. Aladdin is the new number one film in the US domestic market. Aladdin got $24 million for Friday, and it got about $7 million in its advance screening money, so $31 million officially for Friday, a lot more money than any other film earned at the same time. You can see here John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum got $6.6 million for Friday, Avengers Endgame number 3 now, $4.225 million, and Pokemon Detective Pikachu down to number 4. So where does this leave John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum in the scheme of things? On this chart here we have 22 Jump Street, Ant-Man, The Matrix, Shazam, Pokemon Detective Pikachu, and John Wick Chapter 3. A few days ago, John Wick Chapter 3 was very close to where Ant-Man and 22 Jump Street were at the same point in time. We can see now it's moved back a little bit from there. The light blue line is a little bit off the red line and the dark blue lines, and it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million behind Ant-Man at this stage for Friday. And if we look at the purple line and the green line, we can see that Pokemon and Shazam were basically neck and neck until this Friday. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Pokemon film will earn less money than Shazam. Shazam flattened out very quickly, basically because Endgame came out. So Endgame crushed all of the competition at the same point in time, and Shazam was one of the other films there. So the Pokemon film probably won't flatten out to the extent that Shazam did, so it may very well still earn more money than Shazam. And if we look back at the John Wick line, the light blue line, it might look like it's right in between the middle of the Detective Pikachu line or the Shazam line, they're basically the same line, and the Ant-Man line. So if you just look at just physically where they are, and if you just look at the left to right distance or the horizontal distance, it is right in the middle. But that's how many days there are looking left to right. What we want to look at is the money, the up-down or the vertical distance, and it is a lot closer to where Ant-Man is at this point in time than where either Shazam or the Pokemon film were. So at this very early point in time, it does look like it'll probably earn less money than Ant-Man, but it does look like it should earn more money than Shazam did. And it's already been reported that John Wick Chapter 4 has already been approved by Lionsgate. This article goes on to say that Keanu Reeves hasn't confirmed if he'll be in it yet. I imagine he will be, but I suppose maybe they could go with Halle Berry. But I imagine they have to have Keanu Reeves to have John Wick Chapter 4. And if you look at the raw numbers here, on the left-hand side I've got Ant-Man, and on the right-hand side we've got the figures so far for John Wick number 3. So we can see right now for May 24th, that is the Friday we've just had, we've got the $6.6 million in for John Wick 3, and under the total gross it's got $83 million right now. If you look across to the left-hand side for Ant-Man, Ant-Man got $7.2 million for its equivalent Friday, so that's a little bit better, and it had a total of $88.5 million, which is around about $5 million better than where John Wick 3 is. Now, the main thing to always remember is that John Wick 3 is an R-rated film, so it does have a different number of people that can possibly see the film compared to Ant-Man, and 22 Jump Street and The Matrix on the previous chart, they're both R-rated films as well. That's why they're good to try to compare it to. But if we look at what Ant-Man got, Ant-Man only got a 36% increase from its Friday to its Saturday box office. I imagine that John Wick should get bigger than that, and so the John Wick total might not be that far off what Ant-Man got for the Saturday, but overall it will earn less money for this weekend than what Ant-Man earned on the weekend. But on this Monday coming up, we have the Memorial Day weekend, and so generally speaking, it should get something like what it earned on the previous Monday. It is hard to really calculate how much different films will get on a holiday. They always get a big increase, but just exactly what the increase will be, it'll be difficult to say. But if you look at the previous Monday, the May 20th, it earned $5.7 million. So that's a fairly good ballpark figure just to use for a holiday. So look at the previous week's day and just go for the exact same figure instead of reducing it like you normally would. And if we look at the equivalent Monday for Ant-Man, it got $3.3 million. And so it should still be ahead of where John Wick is at that point in time with this $109 million, but it'll be a little bit closer because of the actual holiday for John Wick. So probably somewhere around $105 million is where I would guess that John Wick would be at that point in time, maybe a little bit underneath that, but it'll be somewhat close to where Ant-Man was at the equivalent date. As far as any records go for John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, it's not really expected to break any records at all. It has absolutely smashed the John Wick Chapter 1 box office in total, and it is on its way to beating the John Wick Chapter 2 quite easily. Here on Box Office Mojo, it is currently the 912th biggest film of all time in the US domestic market without inflation. So it should move up from there quite rapidly, but that's where it sits right now, number 912. On the international box office for John Wick 3, it's only got $35 million so far. I was a bit surprised that it was so low compared to the $83 million that it has in the US domestic market. And if we look at the Chinese box office, here are the Saturday figures. We'll see that Aladdin is number one in China right now, $7.4 million estimated for Saturday. Detective Pikachu has moved down to number 2, $3.3 million. Godzilla, didn't even know it was out in China yet, but Godzilla King of the Monsters already out in China, only $2 million. It might be a bit of a limited release. In fact, it is a limited release. If you look across on the right-hand side under the showings column, it's only got 1,765, so much less than the other ones there, yeah. So very limited release for Godzilla, but it is released. And we'll notice that we don't see Avengers Endgame at all. So Avengers Endgame earned less than the number 10th film here, the $0.14 million, or $140,000. And John Wick 3 is also not here at all. And so I looked at IMDb to see if John Wick 3 is in fact released in China yet, and it is not released in China yet, but it also doesn't have a Chinese release date at all. So not only is it not in China yet, that's why the box office money for international was so low, it doesn't have a Chinese release. So maybe there'll be one announced later on, but for whatever reason, China is not showing John Wick 3 at all. So that's not going to be good news for its international box office, but that's where it is at this point in time. Next weekend, we've got Godzilla coming out. I think at this stage they're looking at something like a $40 to maybe $50 million weekend, so that should beat Aladdin. So Aladdin should be knocked off the number one place at that stage. Rocketman's also being released. There's a few differing opinions on what exactly will happen. I don't think they really know what will happen, is basically the news about Rocketman. Some people think it might do as well as Bohemian Rhapsody did, and some people think it won't do well at all. So to see what exactly happens with Rocketman really depends on whether the film's any good or not. The week after that, we've got Dark Phoenix, and we've got The Secret Life of Pets 2. At this stage, most predictions are The Secret Life of Pets 2 will take the weekend box office, so Dark Phoenix won't be the number one film, be number 2 in 2 weeks' time. But until then, John Wick 3 should remain as the number 2 film in the US domestic market. It is possible that Endgame will move above it, but I don't think it'll move above it this week coming up. So John Wick 3 should remain as the number 2 film until next Friday. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.